morning, DragonCon. I'm surprised anyone's here at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, having wandered the bacchanalia of DragonCon. Oh, you're a doll. Thank you very much. Paul+and+storm, she just bought the cosplay bit.
We pass a subsidy.
This is awesome. Like Garrett said, I decided that rather than sort of talk about Wesley Crusher, I would tell you a story that happened when I was Wesley Crusher. It's a story that I love, and it's a story that I originally published in my book, Dancing Barefoot, and then I excerpted it and put it in my book, Just a Geek. And Paul+and+storm and I do a show together called Rootstock. Are you familiar with this show? A few of them? Okay, all right, good. If you don't know what Woodstock is, apparently ask the person next to you. We travel around with Woodstock, and when we can't get everybody from Woodstock together, we do a show called Wil Wheaton versus Paul+and+storm, and that's where we first did the show that we're going to do for you today. But because this is DragonCon, and because there is such epic cosplay at DragonCon, I felt that it was very important that I sort of put in a little extra effort, really make it worth your while to come out here at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. Was it Monday? I'm sorry. It feels like Sunday.
It's second Sunday.
It is second Sunday. I'm going to perform today for you wearing the Cape of Dicks. Oh, Garrett, please bring me my Cape of Dicks. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Paul+and+storm with the love song from Cape of Dicks.
Cape of Dicks, Cape of Dicks, Cape of Dicks, Cape of Dicks, Cape of
Dicks. The Cape of Dicks. Much like my beard, I exist merely as a host organism. I'm just going to grab some water, and then we will begin. Grab some water. Grab some water. It is Cape of Dicks. Cape of Dicks. Cape of Dicks. Before I begin this story, I have to tell you two things. The first thing is that if you find yourselves being offended by the Cape of Dicks, you should leave before I start telling you story. If words like tits, winkle, and vibraphone offend you, you should leave before I tell you story. I also want you to know that this happened a very long time ago, and we're cool now. I cannot stress that point enough. It's okay. We're friends. It's good. It's still a funny story. This is still the way I remember it happening, so I'm going to tell it that way. This story is called William+fing+shatner. I'm 2 words in.
Nice.
2 words in.
Second Sunday.
Second Sunday. You know, the mistake that I made last night was I didn't drink and I went to bed early. I know, it's totally contraindicated by the DragonCon operating instructions, but I had upgraded to service pack. Oh my God, I'm so tired.
By the way, Will, very briefly before you start, I only now thought of it. Tits, Winkle, and Vibrator is the name of our collective Lady Gaga cover band.
Thank you, I'll write that down. The story is called William+fing+shatner. I first met William Shatner on the set of Star Trek V in 1988. I was 16. I'd been working on Next Generation for 2 years at the time. We were enjoying some success with our show, and I was intensely proud of the work I was doing. When I found out that the original series cast would be working next door to us for 2 months, I was beside myself. Roddenberry was still heavily involved with the production of Next Generation back then, and he and I were good friends. When I passed by his door, it was not uncommon for him to throw an executive from Paramount out of his office and ask me in for a visit. He knew that I was a fan of the original series, and he knew that I was more than a little intimidated by these actors. He offered several times to make introductions, but I always declined. If I was going to meet these legends of science fiction, I was going to do it on my own. For weeks, I tried to get up the nerve to introduce myself. When I would walk from the stage to my dressing room or the schoolhouse, which we called Starfleet Academy, I would do it slowly, looking at their stage door wistfully, hoping to catch a glimpse of Mr. Spock or Dr. McCoy, or maybe even the legendary Captain Kirk. The few times they did appear, I never found the courage to approach them. This went on for 6 weeks. Each night I ask the stars above, why must I be a teenager in the Word got around our set that I was too chicken to introduce myself to the original series actors. It became something of a joke, and the crew began to give me some good-natured ribbing about my reluctance. Next Generation was immensely popular at the time, and I was still riding high on the success of Stand By Me. They couldn't understand why I was so intimidated by these actors. My face was splashed across the cover of every teen magazine in print. I was a Star Trek nerd, and they were on Star Trek. Do the math. One afternoon, I was sitting outside Stage 9, talking with Mandy, my costumer. And they opened the huge stage door across the way. I could see right into the set of Star Trek V. There was a large area like a cargo bay, filled with extras and equipment. It was different from our set, like not nearly as cool. But it was still unmistakably the Enterprise. Standing in the middle of it all was William Shatner. He held a script open, sort of like it was a holy text. The way he gestured with his hands, I could tell that he was setting up a shot and discussing it with the camera crew. I waited for that familiar rush of nerves, but it didn't come. Seeing him as a director and not as Captain Kirk put me at ease. I knew that this was my moment. I knew that if I didn't walk over and introduce myself right then, I would never do it. I was wearing the gray acting ensign spacesuit, unzipped with the sleeves tied around my waist. I fucking hated that costume. I hated everything about it. It was up my ass whenever it was on. It was hot in the summer and cold in the winter. It was made of wool, so it was extra itchy around my neck, and they made me wear a muscle suit underneath it. Because really, when you're a 14-year-old nerd, you know what you need to be reminded of every time you move? How you don't have any muscles. Sorry, that's not in the text, that's just in the That costume was uncomfortable. So I'd take off the top half whenever I got the chance. Because it was a jumpsuit, I would tie the sleeves around my waist and wear this lightweight 3D, a thing I worked on in the 90s. Lightweight fleece jacket, zipped up to cover the embarrassing muscle suit the producers had me wear. You may have heard about it. We all wore those muscle suits. All 9 cast members on the call sheet wore muscle suits. Even Michael Dorn. I know, I'm sorry, am I ruining it for you? I think I was the most traumatized by it. I've always been a tiny little nerd without any muscle mass, and having to wear all that thick padding did little to improve my fragile teenage esteem. I turned to Mandy and I took off my fleece. I asked her to zip up my spacesuit and fasten the collar. Oh, Mandy, you came and you zipped up my spacesuit. If I was going to meet William Shatner, I was going to do it looking as close to Starfleet regulation as possible. You know, like you do. She made sure my costume looked good enough for camera, and she wished me good luck. I got a high five from one of the Teamsters as I confidently walked across the street and into the cargo bay of the Enterprise 1701A. It took about 8 steps for my confidence to evaporate. Surrounded by extras in Starfleet dress, standing next to a shuttlecraft, William Shatner, director, was immediately transformed into Captain Kirk, intergalactic legend. I was transformed from Wil Wheaton, fellow actor and mature film industry professional, into Wil Wheaton, the drooling fanboy and Star Trek nerd. I looked around. I guess I blended in well because nobody noticed me. I turned to make my escape and I bumped into a still photographer who had worked on TNG the first season. "Hey, Will, what are you doing here?" he asked. I swallowed and I looked at the stage door. I just came over to look and leave. And listen to this guy who didn't turn his fucking cell phone on. Which is funny because back then cell phones were the size of this mic. I mean, monitor, that's a monitor. That's what it's called. I shuffled my feet and I began to move back toward the familiarity of my own spaceship. "Well, as long as you're here, you should come and meet Mr. Shatner." No. Mr. Shatner? Who is this Mr. Shatner you speak of? There's no Mr. Shatner here. Is he standing next to Captain Kirk? He turned toward Captain Kirk and he called out, "Hey, Bill, come here a second." My heart began to beat rapidly as he turned toward us. Captain Kirk looked right at me. I froze. He gave his book to someone and began to walk in our direction. I involuntarily straightened my back and sucked in my stomach. He didn't do the same. My muscle suit felt tight and awkward around my arms and my chest. Within seconds, he was standing next to us. He was about my height, looked a little heavier than he did on television. Captain James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise said, "Well, what can I do for you?" Did you ever know that you're not Bill, this is Wil Wheaton. He's part of the cast of Next Generation, and he would like to meet you. I could fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. Captain Kirk looked at me for a long time. "So, you're the kid on that show?" My mouth and my throat were dry. My palms were sweating. My heart pounding in my ears as I answered. Yes, sir. Hi. My name's Will. He continued to look at me. I carefully wiped my hand on the hip of my spacesuit, and I extended it.